Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Toronto Maple Leafs playoff edition post-game reaction show here on the Toronto Sports Rush channel, brought to you, of course, by the Bet Rivers Network. My name is Kyle Andrew. I'm joined once again by the incredible NHL analyst, Mr. Pierre McGuire. Now, Pierre, normally this is the part of the show where I lead in with something to the effect of the Toronto Maple Leafs have just left the ice. Not sure they ever actually stepped on the ice. We're staring down the barrel of a 6-1 loss tonight, an embarrassing performance at home. There is no other way to put it. You say it best. You say it always, Pierre. A hockey team is not in trouble till they lose a home game in a playoff series, and now they have.
It's not just that they lost, Kyle. It's how they lost. There was not a lot of second effort. There was not a lot of character. There was not a lot of pushback. There was not a lot of support. The body language was bad. The 1,000-yard stare kicked in right after the spinorama pass in the neutral zone by Mitchell Marner that Boquist eventually scores on to make it 4-0. And then it was over. And it was over probably before that. But the body language was really bad. And that power play to start the third period, I have to tell you right now, that's when the people started leaving the building. That was not a very good look. That was a very bad look.
There's so much wrong with the performance on the ice tonight. There's so much wrong with the way the team is playing hockey now. And I want to call back. You talked about Mitchell Marner's spinorama pass in the neutral zone tonight. In the first power play the Leafs had tonight, the puck was on the right side wall and Matthews picked it up.
Mhm.
He blindly turned and fired a backhand pass 2 feet off the ice into the center of the slot, which was immediately intercepted by a Florida player who broke out the other way. Now, nothing came of it, but there was something about the way he, on the power play, attempted to force that puck into the slot. You knew this team was off right from the get-go.
It's such a good point. It's very fair, Kyle. The truth of the matter is you could see there was not a lot of attention to detail in this game. There's certain things you have to do to beat Florida. You can't retaliate after the whistle. You have to manage the puck in the neutral zone. When you get power play opportunities, you have to make them pay. Toronto didn't do any of those things. And the power play in particular, to your point, was so glaring, and it has been throughout this entire series. It's look at let's give a lot of credit to the Florida Panthers, especially Sylvain Lefebvre and their penalty kill. It's been outstanding, and Bobrovsky's been very good after game number 2 for this Florida Panther team, and he's a big part of the penalty kill. That being said, in the last 2 games, I haven't seen him tested a lot on the power play, and I just think their power play has completely gone out the window. And I think a big part of it is, Kyle, to be honest, it looks like they're freelancing. They don't have a set scheme on their power play.
Yes. That's exactly how it appears. It appears as though we've now put a bunch of and this is a little bit cruel, but it's like a men's league power play right now. You've got 5 guys who were once all-stars, 5 of the best hockey players in the NHL on the ice, all forcing pucks into spots where they don't need to be, not holding it long enough, not entering the zone correctly or at all if they even can. They look lost. They're getting shots from distance, and Bobrovsky's rebound control is just far too good for this game plan.
That's very fair too. The rebound control, not a lot of second chances. And you're a big fellow. When there are those chances, Seth Jones is there, or Mikula is there, or Aaron Ekblad is there, or Gustav Forsling is there, or Nate Schmidt is there. They clear the crease unbelievably well. And one of the things that I've seen that's really started to change in this series is the ability of the Florida defensemen to box out and allow Bobrovsky to see the puck. We weren't seeing that in games 1 and 2. Because I thought the Leafs were more engaged. They were more prepared to fight. They were more prepared to battle. We're not seeing that now. They're getting boxed out pretty easy, and Bobrovsky's seeing all the pucks.
Yeah, they're getting beat in simply every aspect of the game right now. Like I'm so remiss to even look at the stat sheet here because they lost the faceoffs tonight, which is rare for them. Power plays ended up even, but let's call the Leafs goal a garbage time goal if there ever was one. They got out hit again tonight, but they blocked way more shots, which is probably the only reason it wasn't 10-1 because it looked like 10-1. And this was one of those games where it appears as though the actual this was, to me, less about how well Florida managed the game. They played well, but the goals towards the end there, like anyone scoring those. This was about how bad the Leafs played, not about Florida has now settled into their style of hockey. Sorry, I'm getting a little worked up here
No,
because
no,
it's
you're
just
allowed. I think it's great. That's a big part of this, the passion. That's why the Leafs brand is so important. The
yeah,
fans have passion. Don't take that passion away. And the way you're speaking is perfect because it is true. It's
yeah,
true.
yeah. It's just it seems to me as though you go 143 minutes and 25 seconds between goals in the playoffs. Something has to be reset here, and the question now is whether or not it's too late to do anything about it. I mean, this has been Berube's strong suit all season long, but it's very tough to look at tonight's game and find blame in Berube or with Joseph Wall, for example. Like, Wall let in one soft goal, but otherwise he didn't have a chance. The Leafs
No.
were spinning around in circles in front of him tonight. His rebound control was more or less fine. It's just complete systemic breakdown of a hockey team that has played in such a great four-line system all season long.
So I'm glad you brought up the fourth line, and we don't rehearse this. So if you think about it, what did Paul Maurice do after game two? They're down 2-0. They're going home. And he says, you know what? I don't like the grit of my team. I need to get something going. I need to play a four-line game. I need to wear Toronto out. So rather than have Mackie Samoskevich or Nico Sturm or Jesper Boquist as fourth liners, he says, I'm changing my fourth line. I'm putting in AJ Greer. I'm putting in Tomasz Nosek. I'm putting in Jonah Gadjevich. And look what's happened. They win game three, physicality. I know they win in overtime, but they're physical, much more. They win game four, and they're comfortable winning game four. And look at what they do in game five.
Yeah.
Paul Maurice has never changed that fourth line since after game two. He's kept them in there because they've understood their role. Let's go body slam the defense. Let's get after McCabe. Let's get after Tanev. Let's get after Brandon Carlo. Let's get after Morgan Riley. You see what's happened now. And that's just one subtle change. Nobody's talked about that. That fourth line adjustment by Paul Maurice has made a massive difference in this series.
It really has. They're just so clearly the better hockey team right now. We're seeing down the stretch drive of this series the type of Florida Panther team that, they looked like a hockey team these last few nights, ready to once again hoist the Stanley Cup, or at least get that far, because they're handing it to one of the favorite teams come the end of the regular season, come the end of the first round, the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they're doing it they have forced Toronto. They've done the thing they do all the time. They force Toronto to play their game, and they're the best at it. And no one can play the Florida Panthers game the same way the Florida Panthers can. And if they can force a team by getting the first goal, by getting strong on the forecheck, and physically beating people up, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines worth of that, they're almost unstoppable.
The three things you want to achieve in a playoff series: concern, doubt, and fear. We've talked about it before. Make your opponent concerned, make them doubt, and then make them fearful. So Toronto is very concerned. They're doubting a lot of things. That power play to start the third period is exhibit A of that. And right now, after the way their fans treated them and they treated their fans, they got to be unbelievably fearful. Florida's accomplished exactly what they want to do now. Can they put it to bed in game six? I don't know. If I were Toronto's players, I'd be looking at what Willie Nylander was trying to do tonight. Willie Nylander played a heck of a game for Toronto. He really did. He played a heck of a game. They need more guys. Mitchell Marner can't be doing that stuff. Austin Matthews got to be harder on things offensively. He tried to establish a little in the third period, but still, it's not enough. Johnny T, he looks tired. He looks worn out. John Tavares, he looks tired and worn out. So they got to find a way to scrape up some offense here. And if not, they're going to be golfing, after game six. But they got to find a way. And if they don't, like I said, they'll be golfing after game six.
Yeah, it's very true. Like if you're Craig Berube right now, this is a very he's done such a great job of quick turnarounds on this team's the mental aspect of their hockey game of letting go of the past, moving forward with the game plan. This is a completely different assignment for him right now because this team appears to be completely high strung towards the individuality, which we talked about earlier. Guys all just kind of doing their own thing. The system is broken. But if you're Craig Berube, you have 48 hours less than now. The clock is ticking. How do you recenter this lineup? What is the conversation right now in that locker room?
Well, they're probably not a lot. They're probably just
No.
dealing with the meeting. They're probably not saying very much. I don't think even the coach will even address them tonight. He'll address them tomorrow before they get on the plane to go down south. But unless they learn how to manage the puck better, unless they learn how to establish forecheck better, unless they learn how to be less one and done when it comes to offensive zone opportunities, they're not winning that game 6. Those have to happen. They're not negotiable. And, the spinoramas and the blind passes and the turnovers and the odd man rushes against and not being able to contain the cycle. And that's not a recipe for success against a proven championship caliber team.
Yeah, it's they're in a way. I almost wonder if sometimes a game uh, that is this catastrophic of failure from start to end is a little bit easier to swallow in the loss department because they just know we just broke down complete, as opposed to say a double overtime loss on home ice. There's always that debate with a playoff loss, but the problem now is, of course, they're now facing elimination and they don't have wiggle room to be making lineup adjustments. They're talking now, even if Stellars is cleared to play, is he the right choice coming off that type of an injury, flying with a concussion? All of the protocol, only they know. They face this, but I'm of the opinion that Wall is not the problem right now. He let in a soft goal tonight too, but let's not hold his feet to the fire when the entire team was on going to burning down tonight. So it's like you go back into Florida with the hopes. To me, you have to score the first goal. And I understand that's the most fundamental thing to say in all of hockey and stuff, but there's no team left in the NHL playoffs right now where it's more important to get the jump on them because it's the only way to stop them from asserting their style of gameplay for the rest of the game.
I don't know what they're going to do with the goaltending situation, but here's what I do know. The goalie can't score, the goalie
Yeah.
can't create cycle, and the goalie can't win offensive zone faceoffs, and the goalie can't play in the offensive zone on the power play. That's up to the team. And I'm not blaming the goalie tonight at all because I don't think it's on the goalie tonight. Would Stolars give him a boost? Maybe he would. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not around their dressing room. But here's what I do know. I don't need to be in their dressing room to see body language that wasn't good, guys not supporting one another, guys not getting pucks in deep, guys not doing what they're supposed to do on the power play, guys not paying attention to in-zone coverage assignments. That's not on the goalie. That's on the players.
It really, really is. And it's not on the coach either because he's done an admirable job of them all year, but he doesn't tie up skates,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, and it seems like they've consistently come out with a game plan. They played Florida well this year. They played Florida well in the first 3 games of the series, and it's just I quickly glanced online, probably got me a little more fired up than I need to. They've lost the room. Like I mean, it's not, you'd be hard pressed to find people, and I'm hunting right now for some optimism right here. How about put Robertson back in the lineup? What a shrewd move that was. He gets on the scoreboard in garbage time. But I'm struggling, so I can't imagine someone not in the position we're in, analyzing these games, analyzing these performances, just seeing this year after year. This does seem like the same old broken record, and now it's a matter to me of the pride of the players. You have to play for a little bit of pride. You can't go out like this, and they're not out yet. It's still 3-2. They are capable of winning 2 hockey games in a row. They are capable of winning in Florida, but it's very tough to draw that as a likely scenario after what we just watched.
I want to give you a little ray of hope.
Yeah.
I was doing the games in 2019 when the St. Louis Blues were playing the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup final. They didn't just lose game 6 on home ice to St. Louis Blues. They got obliterated. They got crushed. Everybody started the ceremony. For Boston, let's get the cup for Chara. Let's get the cup for Bergeron. Let's get the cup for Bruce Cassidy, and let's just move on. We're going to win the cup in game 7. And then all of a sudden, Jordan Binnington puts on this unbelievable Houdini-like performance to start first period of game 7. And then Marchand doesn't pick up a back check on Alex Pietrangelo. And all of a sudden the game is over after 20 minutes. St. Louis wins, Boston loses. And that's after they got crushed, obliterated in their own building in Game 6. You know who the coach was? Craig Berube.
Yeah.
So he's been down this road before. He's experienced this kind of stuff. He knows what you have to do to get their attention to go win a potential knockout game. In that case, it was a Game 7. He knows how to do that on the road. Now, I don't know if he can do it with these players or not. I don't know if he can. But here's what I know. If I'm Mitch Marner, if I'm Austin Matthews, if I'm John Tavares, if I'm Willie Nylander, if I'm Matthew Nyes, I'm bringing my A game in Game 6. Whether we win or lose, I don't know. But I'm bringing my A game.
Yeah, you have to die on your sword in this one. You have to come out with a type of fight that shows the fan base that you're worth believing in. And, you know, they have off-season questions. Again, there's a time in the future to get into that. And they have the opportunity here to still rewrite the history of this, the recent history of this hockey team, the forever history of this hockey team, however you'd like to word it. But one thing they can take away, again, on a positive note, is we've said this all year long. Again, you just made that reference to Berube's days in St. Louis. He is a guy capable of turning the switch on this. I think sometimes for a professional hockey player, this type of system-wide failure, like we saw tonight, might be a little easier to turn around. But they have a tall order against this particular hockey team in doing so. But it's one possession at a time. It's one shift at a time. It's get out in the first period, start fast, leave it. It seemed to me like what was missing tonight was a willingness to leave everything on the ice. Paul Maurice had a good quote before the game tonight, and he said, one of the best two teams in hockey left, hockey this year and hockey right now has 2 or 3 games left in their season, and that's what this is. There is no time to hold back. And Florida came out and laid down for everything that they know they need to do because they've been there. And what we saw was a Toronto Maple Leafs team that, possibly lacking in deep playoff experience, just has yet to figure out how deep that sacrifice must be in order to keep progressing through.
They got to have a plan. But as Mike Tyson once said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You know, and so Toronto's got to have a plan. And part of that is to overcome hostility, physicality, and not lose their frame of mind. They got to stay on their program. Yeah. And I loved your point before, Kyle. One of the ways you got to stay in your program is you got to score first. When they don't score first, they're chasing the game against these guys, and Florida turns the whole neutral zone into a swamp. It's almost impossible to get through there clean. It's so hard. They're so well coached. They're so prepared. Paul Maurice said on US TV to one of their reporters, I really like the way our team's taking away the gap in the neutral zone. No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thanks for the newsflash. He did a heck of a job.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to imagine how, you know, just watching it, you wouldn't think, like, obviously there's no sport in the world where you don't want to score first. But again, to reiterate, the way this Florida team is capable of changing just how the ice looks to an opposing team when they go up by as little as 1. And because of their forecheck, they end up with offensive opportunities to potentially add to those totals for themselves. They're you never want to chase this hockey team. You never, ever want to do that.
No. And look at their equal opportunity. They've got 16 different scorers that are scoring goals. I think Edmonton's got 15. But what's crazy is tonight you had goals from Aaron Ekblad, you had goals from Mikula, and you had a goal from Kulikov. That went off a lot. She had 3 goals from defensemen tonight.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, a defenseman factored in with an assist on all the others, or at least 2 of the 3 others.
So just think about that for a second. So that's a product of broken down in-zone coverage, which is what we talked about before. When they're scoring that often with defensemen. Now, I know one of them was off a Scott Laughton stick, the Kulikov shot.
Sure.
That's bad luck. That could happen to anybody. Mm-hmm. But that other stuff, no, that's bad in-zone coverage. It's guys not rotating. It's guys not getting in the shooting lane. It's not good enough. You're going to have to sacrifice, to your point. You're going to have to sacrifice.
It really feels like they flipped because Toronto had come out in these playoffs and in this series with the defenseman scoring and with getting that first goal, and that recipe has now just been flipped on them. Very difficult to say how much of a factor the Stellars injury has on this series, be it directly with play on the ice, because again, I don't think Wall's been bad.
No,
I think I don't think he's been the issue here. But if there's a psychological component to knowing that, well, you know, your backup's Murray, and all of a sudden your safety net of that 1A 1B system they had with Stellars and Wall is now removed. There's a lot of things gone wrong for this hockey team. And again, my optimism for them going into game 6 is that it's a little easier to wipe this palette of this game was heartbreaking as of 3-0. Whereas in overtime, a double overtime loss, late night, short sleep can affect a team in such a different way. And in a way that the losing team has affected the winning team of a game like that in the sudden death format. The adrenaline can carry them so far into the future on short nights of sleep and stuff like that. So Berube's got a tall order right now to recenter these guys, because he's not faced this. He's faced, this is their, I believe, 4th 3-game losing streak this season. They had 1 in October and 2 in January. Other than that, it's been rare. And one of those was in an overtime regular season loss. They're playing in the overtime format in the regular season. It is what it is. But now they go back down to Florida Friday night. They hopefully, well, one way or another, they're returning home Sunday. And now whether it's to golf or whether it's to play hockey, that is the remaining question. And Florida is ready. They need to change nothing. They need to maybe they're going to lecture Bobrovsky for letting one in at the end there, ruining the whole game plan. But they need to change nothing, and they need to keep playing this game against these Leafs, and they will see success.
Coach Berube just has to do one thing: get his guys ready to play one game. Take care of game 7 after game 6. Worry about game 6. And to your point, Kyle, worry about getting the first goal. Worry about getting the first goal, establishing your game plan, and sustaining your game plan for 60 minutes.
Yeah, to me, the first 10 minutes of game 6 is the most important 10 minutes of the Leafs season. They need to dominate it the way they did let's be fair, in most of the games in these playoffs, the Leafs have in fact dominated the first 10 minutes of hockey games. A lot of their success they've seen in the playoffs is because of that. Yep. And, I do want to circle back to something else too, because going back to the end of the last game and in a couple of instances tonight, I thought Domi had the right intentions with the increased aggression, but the poor execution, because he took 2 dumb penalties tonight, not 2 great situation penalties. And the way the last game ended may have just served to fire a very rough Florida team up. So it's very hard to say that Domi was, I get what he was trying to do, but I think he's going to need to be reeled back in a little bit in game 6. Tell him to stick to the game plan. Florida at this point, they're too experienced to fall for the stirring up. It's just not going to happen.
They're just having fun with it right now. Watch Matthew Tkachuk, watch Sam Bennett. They're just having fun, and that's what they're so good at. They're very, very good at it.
Yeah, it looks that way. Florida is playing very, very loose right now. They have every reason to play loose. They've won 3 in a row. They've gotten better with each successive game. And if this is their peak, Toronto will be very, very hard pressed to match them going into game 6 Friday night. Right. Pierre, I want to turn the page a little bit. Because we traditionally do this, we will move around the league a little bit right now, because frankly, on the off chance that the Toronto Maple Leafs advance to the next round, we have to discuss what else is going on right now. Around the league at this exact moment, they are down in Las Vegas, tied at 0s. We have a big game 5 in Washington tomorrow night in a series that Carolina has absolutely dominated. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing there?
Well, what I'm shocked about is the lack of physicality from the Washington Capitals. Yes. Usually you can't hit what you can't catch, but usually Washington can catch it. And for some reason, they're not catching it. I think it's experience from Carolina. It's an extremely well-coached team. Rod Brindamore, Jeff Daniels, Tim Gleason have done a great job coaching that team. They're very frustrating to play against because they don't give you odd man rushes. They don't give you a lot in the slot. They don't give you a lot around their net. They keep everything to the outside, and they do an amazing job flooding your zone and getting pucks on goal. Washington's going to have to play their best game of the series in order to get, deeper into the series. And I would just say this very comfortably. Carolina, for whatever reason, they're really good at these games. They're really good at getting people frustrated
Yeah.
and they're comfortable doing that. They're very comfortable doing that.
Yeah, they appear. I've watched most of the minutes in that series. They're a very loose bunch right now. Again, it's what you just said about Florida. They play out there like they're having fun.
Yeah, they are.
And
Carolina's having fun. They are. They're having fun.
yeah, it really, really appears that way too. And who's not having fun right now, once again, are the Winnipeg Jets. They are down 3-1. They are back at home for game 5 tomorrow night, but they're in a tough hole against a Dallas team that limped into the playoffs from an injury perspective and now are firing on all cylinders, and they look like a Stanley Cup favorite.
Getting Miro Heiskanen back yesterday was huge for them. And another thing that I think is really important for them is getting Robertson back, Nick Robertson. He's been very good for them. But Mikko Rantanen, the finish line with Granlund, Rantanen, and Rope Hintz, they're taking the series over. And that's not a knock on Winnipeg. They just don't have guys that can play at that level. And I think Morrissey's not 100%. I don't think Pionk is at 100%. I know Scheifele is not at 100%, but you got to get a save. Connor Hellebuyck's got to play better. If he plays like he played in game 2 in this series, they'll be going back to Dallas. If he doesn't, the series is going to be over. The series is over tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's very interesting. They are back at home where it's been a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde act for him all playoffs and in past playoffs. At home, he's the Hart Trophy winner. And on the road, he is, the guy polishing the trophy if he's lucky because he's on the bench where he belongs because he gets pulled all the time. But you're right. He does need to play better. But it's just interesting how this works, as you alluded to, the fact that Winnipeg, they not only are, but appear to be struggling. They're hurt. They seem like a hurt hockey team right now. And Dallas came into the playoffs that way. And now all of a sudden getting guys back, guys playing top flight hockey, all of it. It's just interesting how those things, 2 trains in the night, right? They just don't always line up for teams. You got the Leafs of the Stellars injury. You've got the Oilers switching back to Skinner and net, and all of a sudden he's playing great again. Yeah. And it's, I don't know, actually, I haven't been paying attention to the game. Who is in net for Edmonton tonight?
It's Skinner.
It is Skinner again. But Picard, I hear he might be ready to go in game 6 if there is a game 6.
Yeah, if there is, he might be, but Skinner's in net right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, Edmonton is, they can close that series out tonight in Las Vegas, and you have to figure from their end, they would absolutely love to get that business taken care of tonight and then see a Winnipeg win tomorrow night to stretch them out even further and give themselves some rest as well. But whether or not they do that, Edmonton is sitting well. So all is not lost in Canada land and in Hockey Canada. Do you have any closing thoughts on the Leafs, Pierre, moving forward, looking back at tonight's game? There's not much to look back at. Looking forward, it's tough to drum up some optimism. But if you're the Leafs fans, it's a sad night. You've poured an extra drink. You started smoking again. You've done all those things that Leafs fans do in these moments. Give me something else optimistic to leave them with tonight.
They have not played an A-level game in this series yet. They were okay in game 1. They were okay in game 2. And they were okay in game 3, even though they lost in overtime. They have been terrible in 4, and they have not been good in 5. Yeah. So I'm counting on them to play an A game. 1 A game to get to a game 7. That's what they need to do. They need to play their best game of the year on what's today, Tuesday, or what? No, today's Wednesday. On Friday, on Friday, you lose track of days. On Friday, they're gonna have to play their best game of the year in order to have a chance to play on Sunday. But that's my whole thing. They haven't played an A-level game yet. They've been close, but not a great Leaf game yet. If they can do that on Friday night, that gives them a real good chance to have a game 7 at home on Sunday.
Pierre, not only is that an optimistic statement, but you're also correct. They have not played their best. There is a lot more left for this hockey team. Whether or not there's anything in the tank for them to put on the ice, we're 48 hours. We are going to find out whether or not this is the same old, or whether this team has in fact changed. But we will, of course, be here back on the Toronto Sports Rush channel covering the post-game reaction. Win or lose, we will be here on the Bet Rivers Network. Thank you once again for joining me. I'm Kyle Andrew, joined by Pierre McGuire tonight after a embarrassing, to say the least, 6-1 Toronto Maple Leafs loss in Florida. See you soon, folks.